Tron has actually been everywhere this weekend. I don't know how much coverage you've watched, Ryan, but I've watched a lot.
I've been busy working.
Yeah, me too. It's the same thing. But Eldrazi Tron has been putting up pretty good numbers against most opponents, but not necessarily the Hogak decks. But they do have some game sideboard graveyard hate combined with main deck graveyard hate thanks to Karn. Come on,
Karn, the Great Creator.
The Great Creator. That paired with a really fast clock and Chalice of the Void is occasionally pretty tough for those Hogak decks to beat.
Saw an Inquisition from Kid take down Chalice of the Void from hand. The turn 1 play for hand was an Eldrazi Temple. He had Thought-Knot Seer. He missed on the turn 2 Seer, but here it comes on turn 3. Kid's responding with the fetch land. Mattery Shaper was a turn 2 play for hand, so Kid did 16.
Yeah, but a fetch and then Revolted Fatal Push here is going to kill the Thought-Knot, but the ability of Thought-Knot will resolve as well and get rid of one of these cards permanently.
See a Bloodbraid Elf, an Inquisition, some lands, and Kid a holdout. Still playing Dark Confidant, has one of those in hand.
Yeah, a couple copies, not going full 4 like we're used to seeing in Jund. Wrenn 6 kind of supplanted Dark Confidant as the go-to 2-drop of choice.
See a Nurturing Peatland being played here for Kid, but for hand, Reality Smasher adds to the clock. An attack for 8, Kid to that number.
Yeah, that cut his clock in half, which is pretty unfortunate for Kid. The Dark Confidant doesn't do much of anything because of the Walking Ballista in Dylan hand.
Here's a situation where Kid just plays a land tap that can't really cast a Dark Confidant. Uses an Abrupt Decay to take care of the Mattery Shaper. Hand will draw a Karn the Great Creator. The Smasher smashes in, Kid to 3.
Yeah, Kid's at 3. Hand can play Karn the Great Creator minus dig for a powerful thing, or guys Walking Ballista for 2, threatening to end the game next turn with just a spend 4 mana tick up, or attack with Reality Smasher. Those two just a little bit too much for Kid to deal with.
Another really quick game 1 there. Dylan Hand up over Michael Kidd.
Yeah, it's just Modern, man. Every deck is kind of just doing its own thing, and when one deck has a significantly better draw than the other one, it's over quick, and it doesn't look very close. The really interesting games in Modern are usually the sideboard games because both players end up playing basically at about 60% because of the hate cards from either side, and as well as just extra removal if they're creature-based deck, sweeper effects, discard effects if they're a combo deck. Things tend to slow down because both decks tend to get a bit more interactive, or at the very least bring in answers to that specific interaction that really hurts them.
Hand not spending a lot of time sideboarding, though Kid's going to weigh over his options. There's an Assassin's Trophy in the sideboard. That one's pretty easy to bring in here. Argument for Kolaghan's Command just because of Chalice of the Void and other artifacts. I do want to ask you about these 3 Fulminator Mage in Kid's sideboard. How do you like them against the Eldrazi Tron deck?
I think they're absolutely great. They come down, they can chump block one of those big Eldrazi and blow up a land, but for the most part, it's just going to function like a Stone Rain. And when you're on the play, a Stone Rain against the Eldrazi Tron deck is fantastic. You just get to pick off one of the Tron lands or the Eldrazi Temple, or sometimes even something like Blast Zone if you played like a really powerful 2-drop and they didn't have an answer to it. I think that Fulminator is one of the better sideboard cards here for Kid in this particular matchup.
Also has a Collector Oof in the sideboard. That one probably a little bit better against Green Tron, but seems to play here.
Yeah, I mean, he is on the play, so if he does draw and casts on turn 2, it shuts down the potential for Expedition Map from Dylan. It also shuts down activated abilities of Walking Ballista. And I'm sure there's a couple things off of Karn the Great Creator that shuts down too.
It stops your opponent from using the Karn to grab Mycosynth Lattice, right? They have to kill your Collector Oof before they can do that, because after you have Lattice, if they have Karn, you have Oof, nobody can do anything. Just have the 2-sided Stony Silence going.
That's certainly true. But if you have more cards in your deck than your opponent, then you can certainly do it.
Yeah. Neither deck produces too many extra cards, so that's an interesting equation.
Occasionally, the Eldrazi Tron decks will play one of those Battle for Zendikar rare lands that when your hand is empty, you spend 3 mana and draw a card. But we've seen that kind of supplanted in recent weeks with Blast Zone. I think Blast Zone is a phenomenal upgrade to the deck, giving you some answers to some weird permanents, as well as just a slew of 1-mana cards that your opponent can play in this Modern format.
You see a 0-1 Tarmogoyf as the first play in game number 2. Kid taking a damage off of a nurturing peat land to deploy it. Hand setting up for a possible turn 3 Tron and a Mind Stone cast on turn 2.
Mind Stone's a great way for the Eldrazi Tron deck to accelerate in the early turns. If you don't have Tron or an Eldrazi Temple, it still allows for an early Thought-Knot Seer, but here we have the answer in a Collector Oof.
It's the Oof and an attack for 0.
What's the word for when something, the name of something is how it sounds?
Onomatopoeia.
Yeah. Oof. That's a good one.
The Oof just shutting down that Mind Stone already. You see a Walking Ballista at the front of Hand's hand. That one's not great here, but here's turn 3 Tron.
Yeah, it does shut down active abilities of all artifacts, but it doesn't stop these big Eldrazi like Endbringer from using their abilities. So here Hand looks like he's going to choosing between Walking Ballista or Endbringer. Chooses Walking Ballista.
Yeah, Ballista for X equals 3. Currently the largest creature on the battlefield.
Yeah, it could have been bait. Certainly fair. Tarmogoyf here, a 0-power creature, because nothing has gone to the graveyard just yet.
Assassin's Trophy on your 3/3. We got an artifact, or Abrupt Decay rather. Artifact and instant to the graveyard.
Yeah, artifact, creature, and instant to the graveyard. So the Tarmogoyf immediately grows to a 3/4. That's an attack in for a chunk of damage, and another Tarmogoyf deployed.
And now, Hand under quite a bit of pressure. And that Abrupt Decay couldn't have dealt with Endbringer, as you see Endbringer and Matter Reshaper deployed. Another Tron land for Hand to get this online.
Yeah, this is a really great turn from Dylan. Put up a giant blocker with the Endbringer, and he actually led with Walking Ballista, I think, as bait to soak up the first removal spell, which is nice. So he has 9 mana, and Endbringer's 6, Matter Shaper's 3.
Oh yeah, good development here for Hand.
See what he can do next turn. You know, if Kid doesn't deal with the Endbringer, he needs something like a Terminate, but Terminate has been seeing a lot less play lately.
Yeah, Terminate's been cold for a while, especially in Jund after Assassin's Trophy showed up.
He is going to sit in here with 2 Tarmogoyfs, and what this signifies to me is a Wrenn and 6. So if the Endbringer does block a Tarmogoyf, it's going to take 4 damage, and then Wrenn and 6's minus ability can deal that last point.
We'll see if and how Hand chooses to block.
This is a real thinker.
It looks like the damage came across, so 8 to Hand knocks him to 7.
It's a fine no block. You have to assume that something's up, at the very least a Lightning Bolt.
And there's that Wrenn and 6 you mentioned.
Yeah, that's going to get back the Nurturing Peat land, but that will shrink the Tarmogoyfs. Now, he can choose just not to get the land back to keep the Tarmogoyfs a reasonable size, but I feel like you should just go ahead and do it now. You can always pop it next turn.
Yeah, exactly. I think he has a fetch land in hand, too. So his next land drop should just put him right back where he was.
Yeah, and they're still safe from something like Spatial Contortion because they do have 4 toughness. So
Hand looking at an attack with the Endbringer. This is going to knock the Wrenn and 6 off.
yeah, that actually just makes the Tarmogoyfs bigger, though, which is a bit strange and a bit scary.
Yeah, Planeswalker to graveyard. See a Thought-Knot Seer for Hand, Tireless Tracker, and Wrenn and 6 possible options. The Tracker gets exiled.
Now the Endbringer will untap as its static ability, so it can either block or make one of those Tarmogoyfs not be able to attack. And I'm curious to see which ability he uses here, because he can also just double block with it and Matter Reshaper on a Tarmogoyf. He can also block and shoot a Tarmogoyf with its 1 damage ability and trade there.
So it's making it so one of the Goyfs can't attack.
I kind of like a double block here. You give Kid an extra card, but you also get a card of your own. But it looks like Hand's going to just go for a chump block, and he's going to get a Karn the Great Creator for his troubles.
So he picks up the Karn there.
Does he have a steering bridge in his sideboard?
He does have an steering bridge, so that's likely to be the find here.
Seems like a pretty good hit. And then the following turn, he might be able to go get Mycosynth Lattice and cast it. And that's a 1-2 punch that Jund might not have an answer to.
Well, that's that situation, too, where Kid still has that Collector Oof. So we'd be in a library counting scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure the Tron deck has more cards in deck because Kid has cycled the Nurturing Peat land twice.
Right.
If he ever cracks a fetch land, et cetera, et cetera.
Hell of a way to end the game. We'll see if that's how it goes.
Now, he does need to start here with a Steering Bridge first, I believe. That also gives him a little bit of time to maybe find an answer to the Collector Oof before he does go for the Mycosynth Lattice, but I don't think he even needs to.
Seagate Wreckage is the land for turn. So he's activating Endbringer. So that Tarmogoyf can't block. Thought Not Seer attacks down Wrenn in 6. Kid not going to give up the Collector Oof to save that one. And here's Karn the Great Creator.
Now, Dylan actually doesn't have to do the Lattice next turn. If he just goes and gets the Steering Bridge and casts it, he can just use Endbringer to continually ping Michael turn after turn or draw cards turn after turn until eventually he finds an answer for the Collector Oof and then goes for Mycosynth Lattice to lock Michael out. But if he has more cards in hand, it might as well just go get the Lattice and say GG's.
So there's the Ensnaring Bridge. He'll cast that. And here's Matter Shaper. Good navigation on this turn. I like the way he used the Endbringer to ensure he could knock off the Wrenn in 6. That stops Wrenn in 6 from putting the Karn down to 2. Guarantees he'll be able to activate and maintain it next turn without something extra from Kid.
Yeah, now Kid is looking for a way to deal with Karn the Great Creator or the Ensnaring Bridge. If he has Assassin's Trophy, and this could be worst case scenario here, if he has Assassin's Trophy and Dylan goes for a Mycosynth Lattice, he can kill the Karn in response, and then Dylan is locked out completely because Collector Oof does the exact same thing static-wise as Karn the Great Creator.
It's definitely an interesting spot. Kid can't realistically tap out unless he's answering something here. So here's Fulminator Mage. That
now,
could knock hand off Tron, but he already has 5 lands.
Yeah, knocks him off Tron. He only has 5 lands, so he needs another land from him because that Mind Stone is currently locked down. So this is what Kid is trying to do to save it, but unfortunately for him, hand does have a waste in hand, so he's going to be able to Mycosynth Lattice next turn. And assuming he has more cards in deck than Michael Kidd, the game is over in Dylan Hand's favor.
And Hand almost played that waste over the wreckage. I don't know how far he tipped it. You know, Kid might not have saw that there was an extra land there. You see he's going for the Fulminator Mage, but I think that's going to wrap things up in Hand's favor.
Well, there is one interesting part here, right? So Michael Kidd, if he goes for the Mycosynth Lattice, Michael Kidd does have the Collector Oof, so Endbringer doesn't work, and he can't cast spells. So eventually he's going to draw enough spells that the Ensnaring Bridge is no longer active. And then maybe some creatures can attack in, and the Tarmogoyfs are pretty big right now, so there might be like a scenario where this is just the wrong play.
That is an interesting point. You see a -2 on the Karn. Finds Mystic Forge.
Yeah, so it looks like Dylan does agree there that it's a little bit dangerous to go for it here because what ends up happening is that neither of them can cast spells, and Kid might be able to eventually attack and kill the Karn, and then Kid has Oof versus Dylan has no Karn with his Lattice in play. That means that Kid has the advantage.
A really interesting game. See the Endbringer draws a card and Hand will play an Eldrazi Temple that he saw was on top with the Mystic Forge. And we'll go back over to Michael Kidd.
Well, he drew the Eldrazi Temple with the Endbringer because you can't actually play lands off of the...
Yep, he knew what it was with the Forge, drew with the Endbringer. Liliana of the Veil for Kidd, that complicates matters further if we're talking about trying to go for the Lattice plan.
A little bit, but the Liliana does get shut down as well once it becomes an artifact. For the most part, this is just a staring contest. If either player can get rid of Collector Oof or Karn the Great Creator, it completely changes the texture, and then Karn can immediately go and get the Microsynth Lattice and shut the game down.
You see hand going to work a little bit with the Mystic Forge. Nice synergy with the Endbringer we've already seen. Casting the Expedition map off the top of the deck. If he's going to build up to Lattice, the Karn's going to have to plus for a couple turns before he can do anything like that, or find a backup Karn anyway.
He tapped 7 there, and I'm pretty sure he's casting all his dust.
All right.
Just slightly off camera. And, I'm not going to say the game's over, but that was pretty good.
It got a lot easier.
Yeah, pretty good.
A lot easier for hand from here.
Oh, and it's tribal, so Tarmogoyf is actually a 7-8.
Mercy.
Almost.
So hand can't really close the game as fast as he'd like to because of his own ensnaring bridge. You see him using Karn to activate that bridge and attack for 6.
Yeah, heads up play there from Dylan, getting in some extra damage, but that's going to do it. Dylan Hand defeats Michael Kidd 2-0 with Eldrazi Tron versus Jund.
And the